the introduction to this book. It has a very beautiful prologue of how this earth was created using wind spirit, fire spirit, water spirit, and then...
Wait, let me guess.
Ooh, okay.
The moon.
The spirit of emptiness.
It's called When the Moon Hatched.
I know. Well, here's the thing.
Boring.
The prologue is this beautiful...
There's no moon in this book? Boring.
There is a moon in this book. Give me a minute.
Hello and welcome to Your Favorite Book. I'm Tanner.
I'm Malorie.
We're siblings.
And we like books.
And on today's episode, we have a very special episode.
Yay.
Where we're going to talk about the books that we read for this month. This week, we decided to kind of take a break from forcing ourselves to read someone else's books.
We read for enjoyment.
Ourselves. A novel idea.
Which, I mean, it's fun to read other books too, but it was nice to have a week off where it was like, oh, I can pick whatever I want.
Yeah. So, I guess I'll go first with the books that I read.
Sure.
I started a few books, but I didn't finish.
I did too.
Yeah. And there were a couple that I started a while ago that I wanted to keep listening to. The first one was Empire of Silence by Christopher something.
I like the name.
Yeah, it is good. And if you understand the story, it's a very fitting name. I've been listening to it off and on for the past few months, and I've really enjoyed it. It's the type of book that you would not like.
I read books that you wouldn't like.
Yeah, it feels nice getting back to our own little camps. Take a break from the exhaustive, epic fantasy sci-fi books that I like, or the soapy YA romances that you like.
It's true.
Empire of Silence is a Dune-style sci-fi, and that's probably a comparison that the author would not like.
How recently was it published?
Very recent.
Okay.
The author's a younger person. I bet they're probably younger than me. So like maybe 20s or something.
Whenever people do that, I'm like, good for you.
I know.
Wish I had more to show for my life.
Yeah. But it's very well written. The actual language is very concise. Some of his descriptions of characters are just lovely. I can't recall any off the top of my head. The writing is good. The story is about a character. The prologue is from the main character's point of view, but after the events of this gigantic sci-fi saga is concluded.
It kind of like Assassin's Apprentice kind of felt like that a little bit sometimes.
Yeah, where it feels like it's narrated by Fitz after the story. His story is over.
That's cool. I like when authors do that. I think that's a fun convention.
Me too. It's a good way to hook your reader, because you're like, well, how does he get to this point? And the main character is this horrible general who's destroyed planets and maybe even entire civilizations. So Empire of Silence, right? It's a very fitting name.
It sounds like an episode of Doctor Who.
Kind of.
I mean that as a compliment.
Okay. It's not as goofy as Doctor Who.
Okay.
And I really haven't seen a lot of Doctor Who. I watched the Mannequin episode when I was a kid and it freaked me out. And I never watched another one.
That's fair. That was a creepy one.
I'm about halfway through Empire of Silence, and it starts on like, he's a 16-year-old, and it's he and his older brother. They're both royal people of this planet. It's kind of similar to Red Rising, where it's like, in the future, the people from royalty are genetically enhanced.
Okay, cool.
And society has kind of reverted back to a monarchy and like strength of the fittest type of ideology.
Yeah, no, I think that's interesting because I feel like you can kind of see society heading in that way very easily.
Oh yeah,
so
like we keep on slipping back into fascism for some reason.
Yeah, well, and also all of the rich have so much money that they can make themselves look young for so long.
Yeah.
I know that's kind of a bastardization of a comparison, but you can see how the snowball effect could happen there.
Yeah, and I love sci-fi for that reason, because you can tackle these like societal problems that we struggle with today of like, oh, the wealthy will always support ideas of eugenics because they believe that it's the natural order for them to be on top because like they were genetically predisposed to be in that position. But it's taken to the nth degree, right? Like they can literally use science to enhance their genetics and live for like hundreds of years and to look young and be strong, and support their own insane narrative that they're better than other people. So anyway, I'm really enjoying it. It's a very long book.
Oh yeah, how long is the audiobook?
I don't remember, maybe 30 hours?
Dang!
But don't quote me on that.
No, that's okay. Obviously, that's longer for a book.
Yes, but it's the type of book where it's narrated from the perspective of the main character when he's in his 30s or something, maybe 40s, and then it starts with him at 16, and then he goes on this crazy long journey.
Okay.
So it's similar to Assassin's Apprentice, where it's you're reading the first half of the book and it's why am I learning about Fitz? Running with the orphan boys and girls and with his dog stealing food and stuff. It feels like it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. So it's that similar sort of thing where it's I'm going to take you through every event of this character's life leading up until the most important parts of the story.
That is so your favorite kind of thing.
It usually is, but I think I'm starting to grow out of it, to be honest.
Oh, no!
No, it's a good thing.
Oh, okay, good.
I really think I'm enjoying shorter form content.
Nice.
Like Goose Girl.
Yeah.
I love fantasy. I'll always love epic fantasy. Mm-hmm. I love My Way of Kings. I love Assassin's Apprentice. Mm-hmm. But I think I would rather return to something like Ender's Game or Gideon the Ninth or Goose Girl or Guards because it's so rereadable.
We've talked about this before, where some of our favorite things, at least some of my favorite things, is when you can tell an author had a super, super grand idea and they boil it down into the best bare essentials to make it simplistic and perfect and beautiful in its small scale. Mm-hmm. Goose Girl does that very well. Throne of Glass does not do that very well.
Not in my opinion.
We've talked about the comparison there before.
Yeah. And for Empire of Silence, it's not a problem of scope. It's just a different style of storytelling. Mm-hmm. I would say it's a better, more interesting story. He can handle the scope of a massive world.
Yeah.
And going through every event of this character's life and keep it interesting. Mm. It's not very rereadable for me.
Yeah.
There are a lot of scenes where it's you can just kind of tune out and enjoy the ride. And the older that I get, the more I'm my time is precious. And can we get to the story, please?
Yeah, I totally understand that.
Yeah. So that's the first book that I have been reading this week.
Nice.
So what about yourself?
The first book I read this month, other than our End of Burning and Shadow of the Gods, which our episodes for that are up on our channel, so you can find those there. The first one I picked up was a reread for me. When I was younger, I used to love this dinky little... I shouldn't call it dinky. There's over 20 books in the series. Mm-hmm. But it's a middle grade fantasy book about dragons, and the series is called Wings of Fire. I've been rereading those just because I love them, and I recently, we both like art as well as reading. And I've gotten back into the online art community, and I have a lot of friends who are oh, remember this old series from when we were younger? And so I've been rereading it for those kind of reasons. And so I'm on book 7 right now. This is called Winter Turning.
So what is the series about?
So there's 3 arcs in the series, separated into 5 books. Mm-hmm. The first 5 is called The Dragonette Prophecy. It's a world where there's only dragons on the earth, cool. And not like our earth. It's a made-up world.
It's a secondary world.
Yes. And there's 3 evil queens who have the entire Dragonlands fighting against each other. There's a huge war. It's been going on for over a decade, and there's a prophecy about dragonettes. 5 dragonettes, 1 from each tribe, and they'll come together and bring peace to the world. So it follows that story for the first 5 books. And once those 5 books are done, we get 5 new main characters that pick up a year or so after book 5. And the world is trying to find its stasis again, trying to find balance between the aftermath of those 3 evil queens and whatever. And yes, it's just another fun middle grade story about unlikely heroes who, when you work together and when you have friends who have different skill sets than you can work together to problem solve very creatively.
I love that.
I do too. I loved it when I was little. My friend Regan recommended it to me when there were only 2 books out, and I followed it all the way until it's over now, which is kind of sad. But I've really been enjoying rereading them.
Does it hold up?
I I think it's great.
Cool.
The stories, again, that same thing of nice, simple, boiled down to what it needs to be, but there's so many creative characters and so many creative magic systems in the world, and the author, Tui Sutherland, does a really great job at building upon that complexity one step at a time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's about 20 books in the series, and it grows at a very comfortable pace, I guess.
Cool.
Yep.
Would you recommend that for me? Maybe the first one?
Maybe the first one.
Yeah.
I think it's great, and it means a lot to me. And it's just cute. It's very heartwarming, but there's still a lot of hard, scary stuff in it. Like, I mean, it's a great middle grade book that shows kids that even if there is scary stuff, even if you are an orphan and you have no friends, you can find somewhere where you can belong and embrace yourself for who you are. Like, I just love that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, I don't really love to read middle grade that often, but like I said, I'm changing from my epic fantasy ways.
Yep.
So you never know. I really enjoyed Dragon Rider by Cornelia Funke. So seems kind of similar vein.
Yes. Yeah, very, very similar feel.
But I like the idea of all the characters being dragons and no human characters.
Yeah.
Seems like there's good potential for world building.
Humans do get introduced, and they call them scavengers.
Cool.
And this main character actually keeps one as a pet in the beginning.
Keeps a human as a pet?
Yes, they keep them as pets. Some of them do. Most of them just eat people, but he releases them because he knows that they would not survive in his ice kingdom.
Okay, interesting.
Sounds so silly.
No,
but
I like that.
It's cute. It's fun. And there's a mind reader in this one, which is very fun.
Well, maybe I'll check it out. Maybe we'll continue our Dragon Rider tier list, even though it's not really Dragon Rider.
Yeah,
it's a dragon. It's tangentially related.
Yeah.
The other book that I read this week that I started and finished was also a reread for me.
Oh, good.
A book from my childhood, Timeline by Michael Crichton. I don't remember how I found it. Dad must have recommended it to me. But he's not a really big Michael Crichton fan. Michael Crichton, if I remember correctly, wrote Jurassic Park.
Oh, yeah.
Among other, like, very popular books. Like, he's a very good premise writer. I can't remember the name for what that type of story is. I guess it's speculative fiction, in a way.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Because it's, like, it's a contemporary sci-fi book.
Interesting.
About time travel. And similar to Jurassic Park, it is premise heavy, where it's like, what if time travel existed?
Yeah.
And it kind of gives you a glimpse into, like, what if a private corporation owned the technology to travel through time? What would that look like?
Ooh.
Although it doesn't delve very deeply into, like, how that would shape the world. Like, what if this company that held all this power, 20 years in the future, how would it change the government and how people live? Like, only rich people can go back in time and they can change their lives for the better. It doesn't handle those sorts of things, which would be interesting. But it wouldn't have caught my attention as a 14-year-old.
Yeah.
When I was 14, I loved, like, European medieval history stuff.
Oh, okay.
We had these,
like serfs and peasants?
Yes, I love that shit.
Epic!
Well, it was more like the knights and the royalty and the fighting stuff.
Yeah.
The medieval warfare.
I guess most people aren't obsessed with serfs.
No, I was like, well, I'm obsessed with, like, how the plow was invented. No, I was more interested in, like, gigantic knights cleaving each other in twain with two-handed longswords.
Epic.
That was more my thing.
Yeah.
We had these, like, encyclopedia books for kids that were, like, picture books. And they were very short.
Was it the Wonder of the Worlds ones?
I don't remember. I think there's called, like, So I See You Knowing Things.
Oh.
I don't remember the name.
That's exactly
I'm just making that up.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
But they had, like, glossy pages. They were beautiful. I loved reading them because it was, like, a good balance of pictures and information for young me. And there was one that had a lot of information on medieval warfare, and I loved it. And so Timeline was wonderful because it combined those, like, historically accurate aspects of European warfare and sci-fi. Like, what if these students who were archaeologists, what's the one where you're looking for dinosaurs?
Oh, paleontologists.
Okay, an archaeologist is human history.
Yes.
I was right. what if these archaeology students working in France, trying to rebuild this old castle, went back in time to that same place?
Oh, that'd be so cool.
It's a really cool pitch, right? And the story completely delivers on that. The plot is fun. The professor who's in charge of the excavation efforts travels from France to America, where this time travel company is located. They send the professor back in time, and he gets lost. They can't bring him back.
Oh, okay.
So the company brings in some of the students. It's 4 students to go back in time and rescue him. And they're obviously experts in medieval history. So it's interesting to see them walk through this. It's a fictional portrayal of France. But to me, when I was a kid, it felt like, wow, this is what France was really like back in the day. And it pits the students right back in this period of time when England was at war with France. There were wars all over the place. So the students are like trying to navigate the politics of like they're captured by the French people. And then they have to get out of that situation. Then they're captured by the English people and they have to get out of that situation. So it's a really good, entertaining plot. It's a very premise heavy narrative. So there's not a lot in terms of like character development, but the characters are interesting enough and likable enough that they can kind of carry you through this fun action-packed story. So you can see where like, okay, he wrote Jurassic Park that was made to a movie. It's a very similar style of story, but with a different premise.
I really enjoy time travel, that aspect of time travel. Where you have all these people who go back in time and they're like, whoa, I'm the biggest fan. And then they're like, oh, I just got captured by the French. And they get sucked into the problem of the world. That's so fun. That's the most enjoyable part of watching time travel things.
And we've talked about how we don't really love time travel from like
I usually don't like them.
I usually don't either.
In books.
Well, I didn't really like Avengers Endgame.
I didn't like that either.
Because I think using time travel as a mechanic to reverse mistakes that were made or to like prevent a disaster from occurring isn't interesting to read about.
The loophole of it all.
Well, there's
Captain America literally makes out with his niece.
It's gross and weird. I don't like worrying about like, oh, the space-time continuum. Like there's unforeseen, unintended consequences and you'll split the timelines. Like, I don't really care about that stuff. Because I don't care about like the boring details of how that might work in your world. Unfortunately, Timeline does delve into those issues. So there's a lot of exposition in this book. A lot more than I remember, and I don't know how it held my attention as a kid.
You're just holding out for the nights.
I was, really. And the story's perfectly entertaining. The problems within the story make sense. Like there's a point in time when the students go back in time to rescue the professor, and in the present, their time machines get destroyed. And that's super interesting and entertaining. But like the way that they solve that problem by like, we need these polymer tubes to be made, and we only have this much time, and don't fill them up with water. It's like, I just don't really care about the specific science-y problems that you have to solve.
Speaking of Doctor Who for the second time, that's part of why I like Doctor Who, is because if they ever get into any of those super nitty-gritty details, there's the classic line of time is made up of timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly stuff. Like, I like those vague, soft magic answers. And I mean, Doctor Who's been doing this for a very long time, so I think they've got that part figured out. But I like that part.
And also the tone of Doctor Who is a lot more whimsical.
Yes,
So Timeline is a more serious story, and so he needs like a serious explanation for like, how is time travel possible? And he goes into all of that stuff. And as a reader today, I'm like,
that's a lot of brain power.
It is. And I just turned my brain off of that stuff.
You didn't actually make up a time machine.
Like, you just need the corporate guy to come up to the students and say like, hey, time travel's possible. And the students go like, okay, let's go save the professor. Instead, there's like pages of explanation of like scientific history.
Do that.
No. I think unless you are really into like historical fiction stuff, then I wouldn't recommend it. It's a fun premise, but if you don't like that sort of thing, then it might be pretty boring.
Yeah.
And the characters are good, but they're not great. It feels like I was reading a movie, but with a ton of exposition.
Ooh.
So it was fun for me to reread.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I'd read it again. Mm-hmm. I also just don't love European history as much as I used to.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I want my more crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Like big fantasy stuff.
Me too.
So,
that's why I like sci-fi so much.
That's the book that I read this week.
Nice.
From start to finish.
Excellent. I have 2 more books that I've been reading this month. My next one I have not finished. It's a honker. When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker. The audiobook is about 20 hours long, so it's pretty darn big. I am not that far into it. I'm like maybe a fifth of the way.
Have you read it before?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
This is the first time I'm reading it. This is a new release. It's a national bestseller. It's like a TikTok
Another
trend.
one of those, huh?
I've been keeping my eye on this since it was like announced, so I wanted to read it before everybody on TikTok told me to read it.
I'm just so sick of big books. I don't know why I can't take it anymore.
The length, or as in popularity?
The length.
Big? Okay.
Yeah.
Totally fair. I mean, I haven't finished it, and I've been reading it for like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
But I've been reading multiple books. I'm not that far into it yet, so I can't give the best synopsis. It's another YA fantasy. I think it's a romantasy, technically. I don't know, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It follows a magical woman who, in this world, it's... Ooh, I just loved the introduction to this book. It has a very beautiful prologue of how this earth was created, using wind spirit, fire spirit, water spirit, and then... Earth spirit.
The Aristotelian elements.
The first spirit is the spirit...
Wait, let me guess.
Ooh, okay.
The moon.
The spirit of emptiness.
It's called When the Moon Hatched.
I know. Well, here's the thing.
Boring.
The prologue is this beautiful...
There's no moon in this book? Boring.
There is a moon in this book. Give me a minute. The prologue is very, very beautiful. It's kind of... It reminds me of In the Goose Girl and Anna Burning when Izzy tells those fantastical folklore tales. It has that kind of introduction with those original spirits and how there used to be dragons on the world too, and the dragons were all killed by humans and kind of left the earth and turned into orbiting pieces of rock that orbit around the earth.
Moons.
The moons are dragons.
Okay, you pulled me back in.
It's very interesting.
There's moons in this book.
And there are people in this world who have magic gifted from those original spirits, so they can hear the music of the wind spirit, and they can communicate with that music to use the power.
And it's just the moon dragon like screaming at their sky, and that's what they can hear.
Yes.
They're just so far away. Normal people can't hear them.
No.
I can hear the wind spirit screaming.
She's like,
save me.
It's really good. Our main character is kind of like a vigilante rebel who doesn't like the way that the world is run currently, where people in power are oppressing people who don't have magic. Classic
social commentary.
Yes.
Rebellion story.
And
is she an orphan?
Yes.
How original.
She is.
Is she in love with the boy? Is she in love with the boy next door?
No.
Is it the handsome, mean boy?
Yes.
Who's in charge of everything?
I don't know yet. I don't know yet.
And is he from the bad guys?
Yeah, I think he is from the bad guys.
Okay,
but here you missed...
pull me back in.
You missed the other trope. She has a best friend who she cherishes.
A boy best friend?
No, a girl best friend. It's like her younger sister. And she gets...
Is she gay?
No, she gets brutally murdered in the beginning.
Oh, that's
Thus starts her
boring.
Vengeance warpath.
Come on.
There's a very interesting mystery in this.
Is she bisexual?
Yeah, that is the mystery. No.
Sorry, I'll stop interrupting you.
You're fine. She has a connection with the wind spirit, and the wind spirit is known for being particularly aggressive and violent, which was interesting because usually it seems like the fire spirit.
Yeah, with fire.
But the wind spirit is known as having no care and no empathy for others, and it just wants to live and move. And so, like in the first scene, she's murdering someone for her boss, and she rips the air out of his lungs and slowly suffocates him to death. while she tortures him. It's a very aggressive book. It's very gory. But she has a lot more power than she's letting on, and she goes into these sort of fugue states where a lot of dangerous stuff happens around her, and when she wakes up, destruction is surrounding her and she doesn't quite know what's happened.
It's an interesting world-building hook.
It's very interesting. Obviously, it's not interesting enough because I haven't finished it yet.
So what's keeping you from really falling in love with it, do you think?
Well, Bonesmith came out in the middle of me reading this.
Ghostsmith came out.
Yes, Ghostsmith came out, and I've been eagerly anticipating that book. So it just got interrupted by a preference of a newer release.
Okay.
But I'm liking it so far.
Would you recommend that book to me?
This one?
Yeah.
Probably not so far. If something fantastic happens, it's like, oh, whole bunch of exposition.
That's not what I like.
I know, just kidding.
I'm changing. I'm a recovering world-building aholic.
Yeah, I don't think so. Not currently. I think it would be too much romantasy for you.
Yeah.
But some of the world-building stuff I think you'd really like. I will say I do not like the cover because it's made with AI.
Well, that's going to be every cover from now on, so get used to it, honey.
So, boo.
Sorry I called you honey. I've never done that before.
It was a little bit weird. Boo, AI covers.
Can I see?
Yeah, it's very obviously AI.
Oh
Don't do AI covers.
Just hire
Sarah
an
Parker,
artist.
you became a New York Times bestseller overnight.
Is it self-published?
No.
Okay, well, then it might be out of her hand.
Okay.
The publisher might have said, here's your cover. You get to choose between option A and B.
Fart you.
Yeah.
Farts on the people who decide to use AI for covers. It also looks like crap.
Yeah, it looks ugly.
It's not good. Just the cover.
Sorry.
Ooh, obviously, we have
Doesn't
strong
matter.
opinions on that. Anyway.
You don't get to choose.
I know. Do you have another book?
Yes, and this is a little different because it's not really a book, it's a comic.
Oh.
I've been getting into comics again recently. This is The Weatherman by Nathan Fox and Jody LeHeup. And I don't know how to say their name. And colors by Dave Stewart, who did the colors on Hellboy.
Wow.
I've read, this is also a reread. I got this comic in 2018. Ooh,
it's signed too.
I know. I went to a convention in Maryland and I met the author there and I loved his art so much. You can open it up and look at it if you want.
I'd love to.
I know this is a little bit...
Another ASMR.
I know.
First I turning book pages and now I'm crinkling.
I went to a convention in Maryland and met the artist, found his work, and I loved it. And I bought the first 4 issues of his comic right there. And I lost the 3rd issue. I can't find it.
No.
I have 1, 2, and 4. But it's a really great
annoying.
story. Oh, you should not look past that page,
okay,
actually.
Thank you, because
case
I
you wanna
really
read
would
it.
like to read that.
And there's a big spoiler.
Okay, thank you. Good timing.
It's a sci-fi book.
Mm-hmm.
Sci-fi comic. Big sci-fi comic. Really fun, likable character. I love the artwork. It's so loose and gestural. So much fun. The action is great.
Mm-hmm.
If you are in a bad place mentally, like if you are feeling some sad times, maybe don't
into
read this
it.
book because it's dark.
Mm-hmm.
I loved it when I first read it. I've been enjoying it wholeheartedly on my reread. The inciting incident, I knew it was coming from a mile away and it still hit me like a Mack truck. The first time I read it, it was like being run over by 10 Mack trucks.
Wow.
I can't even say anything. It's just that hard.
Wow.
So maybe if you're not in the right place to read it, don't.
Uh-huh.
But I think you would love this.
Okay.
And anyone who likes sci-fi would really like this comic. I don't know how hard it is to find because I bought it at a table, obviously.
Yeah.
The story's been going on for 3 issues, if I remember correctly. I'm not caught up with it. I've finished the first issue. And the story takes some wild twists and turns, but there's an amazing world-building mystery that it opens with that I also won't spoil. The main character, Nathan Bright, is a weatherman. It's called the Weatherman. For the planet Mars, which has been terraformed. And the planet Earth was destroyed by a terrorist cell called the Sword of God.
Whoa.
And Nathan Bright has a mysterious, strange backstory. And it's a great hook for the world building mystery.
Is he an Earthling or a Martian?
He's a Martian, but he came Actually, he came from Earth.
So he is an Earthling.
So he's an Earthling,
but he
yes.
now lives on Mars.
Yes.
Cool.
So the Earth was recently destroyed.
Okay.
For most people. And Nathan Bright, he's a very popular weatherman because he's a crazy goofball. The name is great. His character design is great. He always wears this bright yellow Hawaiian t-shirt. He's just a chill dude who doesn't care about anything bad. And he gives people in the...
Is it still called a Hawaiian teacher if he's living on Mars?
I guess so. Maybe... I mean, yeah, sure. Why not?
We need an equivalent...
Maybe there's a fictional island.
Just kidding.
Well, I guess it's not definitive whether it's a Hawaiian t-shirt or not. There could be a fictional Hawaii on Mars that t-shirt comes from.
Yeah, New Hawaiian.
The New Hawaiian t-shirt. Anyway, Nathan, he gives people on the planet Mars hope in a very dark world. So everyone loves him. Which is funny for a weatherman.
Yeah.
Like, who knows who your weatherman is? But in this, maybe it was more common back before, like, the internet, where it's like, you know who your local weatherman is. They're a crazy guy. Everyone loves the local weatherman. So I really enjoy it for that reason. I very much recommend it.
Sweet. I'll totally check that out.
Yeah. What was your last book?
My last book is Ghostsmith by Nicki, Preto.
We read Bonesmith.
Yeah, it was our first book we did for the podcast.
And I do not recommend you listen to that episode.
It was our first episode. We've learned a lot since then.
It's bad. Don't listen to it.
Yeah, we need to redo
we should redo it. But you've been reading the sequel.
Yes, so I've been looking forward to this ever since I read Bonesmith. I got Bonesmith as one of my Fairy Loot subscriptions. So I read it as soon as it came out, which was last October, and I read it in like...
Oh, October. What a beautiful month.
I know, we're almost there.
I know.
We're almost there.
It's a perfect time for this book to come out.
Yes.
It's very haunted, which is a tone that I love more than anything in the world.
I do too.
Yeah.
And...
Even though I just said that the mannequin episode from Space Dad, what's that movie called?
Space Dad.
Space
Doctor Who.
Doctor Who scared me. I do love horror.
Yeah, so I've been eagerly awaiting this release since last October, so it's been almost a year, and I'm so happy it came out. I'm really enjoying it.
You're almost
done. I have probably a quarter left, so I'll probably finish it today.
Get back to work.
I know, I've been reading a lot this week, and I'm really enjoying it. I really like how much the magic system is evolving. At the end of book 1.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah. I won't.
We should
spoil
explain
it.
what the.
Oh yeah, what's the
premise is.
So Bonesmith is a dystopian world in which there are magic systems where some people are able to manipulate types of objects. So there's ironsmiths who manipulate iron, goldsmiths. There used to be woodsmiths, and the main character is a bonesmith. And
Wren.
Yeah, her name is Wren.
She's named after a bird.
Yes. She works as a Valkyr, which is a person who...
Valkyr.
She's a person who can use bone magic to communicate with the dead, and she works in tandem with a Reaper, and both of them reap the haunted ghosts that are attached to haunted bones.
It's a little bit to explain.
I hope that made any sense at all. Basically they're necromancers.
They're basically necromancers.
Yes.
The Valkyr is like the soldier part of that duo, and then the Reaper is more like...
The mage.
The mage, yes, exactly.
Yeah. The priest mage.
Yeah, the Valkyr is a martial artist, and they use bone weapons to fight ghosts.
Yeah, so it follows Wren. At the beginning of book 1, she has her whole life built up for her, and it gets ripped away from her in the first chapter. And
she's the daughter of, like,
the House of Bone.
Yeah, so she's royalty, basically. Yeah,
and she gets knocked way down to below level 0, and has to figure out how to get her life back together. It leads to an unlikely adventure with some enemies that she thought didn't exist anymore. There's a prince involved.
A handsome prince.
Yes, a handsome prince. It's very fun. And at the end of book 1, the magic system that has been set up expands in a very unique way. And it continues expanding in book 2, which I'm really enjoying. I'm liking the magic system. We get a handful of new characters. We get a couple new point of view chapters from Ren is the main character. Her love interest is Julian.
Okay.
And then we get a couple from Leo, who's the prince. And we even get a couple from another character named Inara, who was Ren's #1 enemy in her academic setting.
In the first book, but then she realizes maybe she's not her true enemy.
Yes. I'm really liking it.
Okay.
I hope I like how it ends.
What's the adventure about? Is she still trying to make her father like her?
No. At the end of book 1.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert. Her father betrays her, and she realizes that her whole life has been set up by him, and she's been manipulated the whole time, and she's like, whoa, you're an evil bad guy, and you want to take over the world. And
I had these new secret powers.
Yeah.
Because I don't know who my mom was, and she might have been this powerful sorceress that used this forbidden magic.
Mm-hmm. So she goes back on her adventure with Julian, the prince, and...
Prince Leo.
Yes, Prince Leo. And the three of them journey back into the haunted territory.
Mm-hmm.
And they are trying
Not that haunted.
Yeah. They're trying to stop Ren's birth mother from also taking over the world. There's three different forces at play, all of which are trying to take over the world using ghosts and armies and soldiers and magicians.
Okay. Well, I will say I like the length of this book just by looking at it.
Yeah!
Personally.
Give you some smaller books.
Yeah. I don't know why I have such an aversion to big stories lately.
You're like, I've listened to so many 45-hour books, I can't do it anymore.
I know.
Take my time.
Like, I just want to get in and get out with my story.
Yeah. I will say I'm having some pacing issues with this book.
Uh-oh. Sounds like there's a lot going on, though. I mean, ostensibly, on the surface,
Yeah,
you've got 3 villains. It should be like a pressure cooker for your plot.
Yeah. Well, the issue is that, like, I feel like I'm seeing the plot go, build up, and then I'm only halfway through the book.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the plot should be at the top, and I'm like, oh, it's either got to keep going, plateau, or plummet.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just kind of interested.
So go ahead. Sorry.
I'm interested to see how it's going to resolve and how it's going to get the stakes higher.
Because you want them to be higher.
Yes.
But you're seeing, oh no, this might be the peak.
Yes. It
and
just
that's a
feels a little bit...
What are this? Okay, yes. I see what you're saying.
And
what are the stakes?
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not done with it yet, so I'm judging it prematurely.
No, that's fair. You should trust from this podcast, I've learned that you should trust your instincts. Mm-hmm. And usually, like, if you have a bad feeling about a book, like after the first few chapters, and I know this is like, kids have bad attention spans. I think that's a whole load of horse hockey.
Yeah.
Then you're probably right. That there's probably something they didn't establish at the beginning that they should have some sense of progress, some source of conflict that should sustain you throughout the book.
Yeah.
That they neglected, and you can feel that right away.
Mm-hmm.
But usually, it's not until you finish the book that you can really say, oh, this is what their intention was with the story. They kind of missed. They should have put more of a focus on this thing. So,
Yeah, I mean, the stakes are high, and they're doing pretty good at, like, the emotional plot and the emotional character growth between the characters.
Yeah.
But it just felt weird that the thing that they were building towards happened in the middle of the book, and then there's still a whole half of the book left. So I was kind of like, wait.
I've infected you with my virus.
I know, that's what you say all the time.
Yeah.
Is your expectations are here, and then you're like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see what I will think by the time I finish it.
Yes. To explain what I mean by I've infected you with my virus, is that one thing that really bugs me about stories is when they promise something at the beginning and they deliver it too early or not at the level that you expect, where it's like the world is going to end, and then they save the world halfway through the book, and then their motivations or the goals for the story shift suddenly, or they don't promise that thing at the right time.
Yeah.
Where it comes too late. We're like, well, now the story's starting now. You're going to save the world now halfway through the book. Mm-hmm. So that's interesting that you picked that up.
Yeah, it is interesting. And there's also been a couple times when the main character could be using her new magic and she's not. And as a reader, I'm like, why aren't you just doing it this way and it would solve this issue?
Yeah, that might be another scope thing, right? That's what I mean by scope. Like the author, they are good at handling one magic system, but then they give the character two, and it's like, what?
Yeah, and the only issue is Ren was too powerful with her secondary magic system from the beginning.
Especially at the end of the last book, from what I remember.
Yes, and that same kind of thing happens, and I'm like, you could just solve this problem right now by doing that first thing you did, the literal first thing you did with this magic.
That's frustrating.
And then, anyway, I need to finish it before I make a concrete opinion.
Yeah.
But I'm nervous.
Okay.
Because I loved the first one so much.
Yeah, that's hard when your expectations are high.
Yeah,
personal
then
expectations.
We both read all the Gideon the Ninth, which is, I'm sorry, nothing should compare to Gideon the Ninth, so it's a little bit hard that this is also about necromancers.
Well, same genre.
Yeah, and I'm still enjoying it, and there's enough things that make it unique and different. It doesn't feel like a ripoff to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, they're both necromancers. Of course, they're both are going to be bone magic. That's the whole point.
Mm-hmm.
But, I don't know.
I'd be curious to read it. I remember, it sounds like the problems you have with this book are the problems that I had with the first book.
Yes.
And maybe since doing this show, we've both learned more about storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're starting to see like, the world building problems are still kind of there.
Mm-hmm.
But the emotional component, I remember she delivered on that very well in the first book for Ren. Like, she wanted her father to approve of her.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the end of the book, she realizes she doesn't need that to be happy.
Yeah.
Just great. And that was totally satisfying.
Mm-hmm.
Her settings were always super interesting.
Yeah.
Like, very
Same
visual, very memorable.
This one has kind of catacomb kind of vibes.
Cool.
Too.
Like, they're a very good visual description writer, which is an underrated...
Underrated?
Which is underrated. Underate? You know, the number 8? Which is an underrated aspect of writing. Where it's like the author forgets, like, you describe what I'm seeing here. Make your settings more interesting, especially if it's sci-fi, fantasy, secondary world stuff.
Like, you gotta go ham.
Go balls to the wall with it. It's part of why I like Shadow of the Gods so much.
Yeah. And it's good. I also think when I first read the first book, I was just so devouring it and excited about it that I didn't see those issues until you had brought them up, and I was like, oh, darn it.
Yeah. Sorry to burst your bubble.
Right.
Well, I was the exact same way with, like, Assassin's Apprentice. I just loved it so much because I was extremely depressed. I was like, this character's sad too. It's okay to be sad. And then I gave it to you, and you're like,
I've been haunted by ghosts, so it's
so that's why you love it.
About it.
Nice. Well, I'd be interested to read that book, just because I read the first one, and I'm curious about the sequel. I think if it weren't for you,
so.
Oh, that's good.
So
really,
yeah,
that's the end of this saga then.
Yeah, okay. And it was pitched as a duology from the beginning. So.
I love that.
I do too. I like a duology.
I like a short story.
I like them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, cool. I don't think I read anything else. I read a bit. I started a couple of other books. I'm not going to talk about it. It's not worth it. But those are the big books that I read this week. I would only recommend, and it's the only thing that isn't a book, the Weatherman to you.
Good. Yeah, I'll definitely check it out.
Well, thank you all for listening if you made it this far. And if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe to the channel.
Let us know what you guys read this month.
Yeah. Drink a like button. And eat us a comment.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you all for watching.
Hopefully we're not underated.